Welcome to the Oakland County Megacast. I'm Tyler Keefe alongside Ronnie Dahl in the studios of our flagship stations, 89.3 Lakes FM and Civic Center TV. In addition, today, as always, we're on Birmingham area municipal access, our television stations, Comcast, Channel 15, and AT&T, Channel 99. On the radio, of course, in Greater West Bloomfield on 88.1 WBFH The Biff and on 89.3 Lakes FM. We're also online, civiccentertv.com. Click on our Watch Live link at the top of our homepage, or viewing that small player at the top right as well in high definition. And on Facebook, facebook.com/CivicCenterTV15 and facebook.com/LakesFM. And as always, joining me here in the studio is Ronnie Dahl.
I think we need a redo button.
We do. We need a redo button on a whole lot of things in this building, apparently. But you know, the radio system over here, our playback system, and we're not seeing eye to eye right now. We're not friends. I'm not liking this guy right now.
Yeah, but you know, my whole morning has been like that.
Oh, yeah.
So I ran out of coffee.
Oh, no.
So I'm like, let me go to Starbucks. Excuse me as I cough here.
That's fine.
When you get down past Maple, the power is still out on that end. So at the roundabout and all those stores. So no coffee, no Starbucks.
Oh, no.
So then you're like, let me go around. So I stopped at the gas station because, of course, I forgot my water as well. So it's like, you need water too. Well, their card machine is down. Who carries cash on them anymore? Usually I keep money in my, in my car, but all my extra cash is in Bubbles, the smart card.
Oh.
Because usually I do it when I'm with Trixie, so I can tip people.
Yeah, of course.
It's just been one of those mornings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. One of those mornings, especially with all the power situation still being addressed also, and a lot of lights are out, but it's kind of, like we said yesterday, there's still pockets. There's been a lot of those pockets where it's open and there's no issues, and so it kind of makes you think, okay, well, I guess they cleared it up in this area. But no, those pockets are expanding as they fix things, but there are still areas now the pockets have kind of flipped on their heads, where now there's pockets of power outages still that are affecting traffic lights. So again, this morning on my way in, perfectly fine in Wixom and in the Novi area, and getting into the borderline between Wixom and Novi, and the Wixom-Novi area and Walled Lake, most of it's fine, but then you get onto Maple Road just past on Pontiac Trail, and that's where the lights start to be out, and you get lines of 15, 20 cars at a four-way stop, and people being stupid. Like yesterday, on my way home, I had this guy that I was dealing with. I didn't get a good look, but I assume it was a man because of the behavior. I just say, look, I'm honest. And I'm stopped at this light, okay? And it's one lane going one way, one lane going the other, and there's a middle lane that's a turn left lane, okay? Right. So that lane's to my left. I am at a four-way stop. This car is next to me. It's my turn to go. It's our turn to go. I can go straight. This guy can go left. I start going straight, and this guy's still to my left, and then jumps out in front of me. So, of course, I lay on the horn like, hey, dummy, left means left. What about this layout made you think that was a two-lane straight road? Come on. So then later on, I go to the next light. I'm taking the next light left, and I, just slip into the lane, and this guy honks at me. No reason. I'm not impeding his traffic at all. He's just stopping at a light, and I just passed him. He honks at me, and so I'm like, this is the kind of person that's like, if you walk down the street and you walk up along somebody's left, and you just go and lay your shoulder into them and then tell them to watch it, that would be a little off-putting, wouldn't it be? That's like, what are people's problems? Just think. Just use your brains, people.
I will say we have to be so careful right now. There was another shooting on the freeways overnight. This is becoming so frequent now. It's really scary about the number of freeway shootings that we've been having. And plus, of course, the incident with the Detroit firefighter in Troy who was killed after a road rage incident. So you really have to just be careful. It's like, it's not worth it, people. It's just not worth it. I know we're all frustrated, but so I get there a few minutes late.
Right. Leave a little earlier, or just accept that, you're going to be a little bit late. Calm down. Breathe. It's really therapeutic for me and avoids my own road rage, not roid rage. Two completely different things that are not that I don't engage in either of them. What avoids my road rage is just roasting the other drivers from within the confines of my vehicle. Leave the windows up, make fun of them, make a whole story about why they're doing whatever dumb thing they're doing on the road that would be great evidence for why they shouldn't be able to renew their license, and just move on with your life. Instead of yelling at them and making, hand gestures and telling them that they're number one, just, calm down, take a breath, maybe make up a story, and, let's all get from point A to point B.
You're going to need that patience this weekend because so many of the freeways are going to be closed down. Yeah. I-75 from 8 Mile up to Square Lake, I believe, because of bridge work. Both directions of the freeway is going to be closed down. I think the Southfield Freeway has work going on as well. I always wonder, every summer we go through this, when they plan out some of this road construction, and it's like every route is closed down. It's just...
There's a detour, and then there's a detour, 4-year detour, and then that detour's got a detour as well. Then the 5th detour down the line, that's fine for a mile until the next one.
Right. And so, with that Mother Nature, it'd be nice if you gave us some nice weather this weekend. I mean, no storms, I don't think, are in the forecast, but you walk outside today, it was like fall time.
Right.
I was like, whoa, what happened?
It's nice and chilly out there. I'm like, okay, when's the game?
We would really like nice weather so we could just, hang out here around the lakes and enjoy a good time.
Maybe relieve some stress for those people on the roads that are, being real jerks right now. Getting ragey.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, Tyler, so with that, let's go ahead and jump into the headlines. St. Joseph Mercy is now going to be requiring COVID-19 vaccinations for its employees. Trinity Health, which includes St. Joseph Mercy, Oakland, and Pontiac, has announced effective immediately all colleagues, clinical staff, contractors, and those conducting business in its healthcare facilities must be vaccinated against COVID-19. So the requirement applies to Trinity Health's more than 117,000 employees in 22 states nationwide in an effort to stop the spread of the virus and keep all patients, colleagues, and the broader community safe. St. Joe's Oakland employs about 3,000 people who are going to be impacted by this decision. Henry Ford Health System announced the vaccine requirement for its 30,000 employees back at the end of June. We'll be talking with Eric Wallis a little bit later here in the show. So the employees at Trinity Health must meet a series of rolling deadlines, with most locations requiring them to submit proof of vaccination by September 21st. It has not yet been determined if a COVID-19 vaccine booster will be required each and every year, but if so, employees will also need to submit proof of the booster as needed. If you don't do so, you no longer have a job.
Yeah, and this is another thing that I think is going to become more common in these health systems first, and then maybe spread to other businesses. We haven't heard a lot so far about too many businesses, at least not major companies and major systems outside of the healthcare field, that have been mandating these requirements. Of course, Henry Ford Health System was the first one of the major health systems in the local area that did mandate this, and now St. Joseph Mercy Health System, as part of Trinity Health, is now the second. I think that we're going to see the smaller health systems will probably follow suit, and then maybe some other businesses as well as we get further along into this. And and if that doesn't happen, then it's going to be maybe little bits and pieces here and there where you have people that are required to have vaccinations in order to work in office settings. It's going to be an individual business-to-business decision, but I think that this is going to continue to become more commonplace as we still are trickling along toward that 70% margin, but are not really anywhere close to hitting that benchmark anytime soon.
And with that, Pfizer is seeking to get okay for a third vaccine dose. So basically a booster shot. Pfizer is about to seek U.S. authorization for a third dose of its COVID-19 vaccine, saying that another shot within 12 months could dramatically boost immunity and maybe help ward off the latest worrisome coronavirus mutant. So research from multiple countries shows the Pfizer shot and other widely used COVID-19 vaccines offer strong protection against the highly contagious Delta variant, which is spreading around the world and now accounts for most new cases here in the U.S. 2 doses of most vaccines are critical to develop high levels of virus-fighting antibodies against all versions of the coronavirus, not just the Delta variant. And most of the world still is desperate to get those initial protective doses as the pandemic continues to rage. But antibodies naturally wane over time, so studies are also underway to tell if and when the boosters might be needed. And a doctor with Pfizer said that early data from the company's booster study suggests people's antibody levels jump 5 to 10-fold over that 3rd dose compared to their 2nd dose months earlier. So, that's one of the things that they are going to continue to study. Not just with Pfizer, but with the other vaccines as well. Will we need a booster?
Yeah, that's research that's going to continue to be ongoing for these other vaccines. Pfizer, of course, with this push for approval for this 3rd dose of the vaccine, this effective booster, as it's going to be referred to. It's not entirely surprising. I would expect Moderna and AstraZeneca and others that have 2-dose vaccines to follow suit within the coming months as well. But this is something that we have been talking about. We have been speculating about since the onset of these vaccines going out to the public, because we don't know how long they do last in terms of protecting against COVID-19. And we also have other variables coming in, such as these variants like the Delta variant, which these variants, as they continue to mutate and they continue to become new variants of COVID-19, are going to keep getting, presumably, may keep getting stronger and being more effective and less effective against these vaccines. So this research is necessary, and we may have to get booster shots along the way, like we do with many other vaccines.
Hey, so many people are having serious problems with the Secretary of State.
What else is new?
So expanded hours and the ability to renew your driver's license and state IDs without visiting the Secretary of State branch are among improvements and changes coming to the SOS branches. Michigan Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson says that the dreaded visits to the Secretary of State will become shorter with new methods of serving people. Online visits can be scheduled at michigan.gov/SOS or by calling 888-SOS-MICH, or you can go into an office and schedule a visit in person. So there are 2 other main advances to the new operating model. From July 19th until September 30th, all offices will stay open until 6 p.m. on Mondays and Thursdays and open at 8 on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays to try to deal with the backlog from the pandemic. Offices are usually only open from 9 to 5. Driver's licenses and state IDs that expire on or after July 1st can now be renewed online, so you don't need to wait in line to renew your expired license. In addition, photos only need to be retaken every 12 years rather than 8, making required visits even less frequent. I don't know if this is going to be enough to kind of clear up that backlog. It has been a nightmare. I mean, there have always been issues with the Secretary of State's office. And you also, too, wonder, why are you only open during business hours?
Right.
It's like you have to take off a day of work to be able to renew your license.
Right. If anything, maybe shift the hours and more so than adding an hour to one side of the day or the other like this. I mean, that's going to be great for that one extra person that's going to get through the line in that full hour. I'm sure they'll be very helpful. But on top of that, I think another thing that needs to be added is more information about services that you can get access to without going to the Secretary of State, and have some procedural information about what needs to happen in order to do that. What information do you need to bring to the remote kiosks that are in places like Kroger and Meijer? What are some documents that, for example, when I changed my address, I had no idea that I didn't need to make an appointment for that or go in for that, and I could just simply print the address form, bring it into any local branch office, and they would process it right then and there. And it actually took a lot less time than I thought it was going to end up processing it. I had no idea because I had no no information about that process being possible from their website. Those are the kinds of things that will speed up these processes and will alleviate the stress on people that need these services. An extra hour on one end of the day or the other is not really going to be that helpful, especially when they still need to make appointments for it, and those appointments go magically the second they open up.
And some of those too, I worry about the people. We're just assuming everyone has equal access to the internet here as well.
Right.
So you worry about so many of our seniors that still aren't comfortable with going on the web. But there was a guy when I, a couple weeks ago, had to get all my license, my plates renewed. So that's easy. You just go to the kiosks out,
Sure.
In the lobby. He, though, was trying to get his tabs for his boat. And he had an appointment like months ago, got there, was missing one document. So they didn't, he had to go and go make a new appointment, which was like 7 months later. Yeah. It was just like, oh my gosh, so frustrating.
In the old system, that would have been like, okay, here's a note that says, hey, you were already here, go ahead and forego the line, because you literally need one more document for us to note, copy, scan, put in the system, and get you what you need. That sounds a lot more efficient than, we'll see you in 7 months when you bring this document back to us and can get another appointment. And we'll see then, will you be able to get what you need? Stay tuned. You'll have it in time for winter, your boat license.
So I will say, too, we know it's not a new problem.
No.
I mean, it's always been a long frustration for people with the Secretary of State's office. But this is how innovative people have become through the pandemic. They are actually selling appointment times through Facebook Marketplace. So if you've been unable to get through or to get an appointment in a timely manner, then some people are going online, they're booking a bunch of appointments, and then they're going in and they're selling them.
And we should note that that is very much not okay. And the Secretary of State's office allegedly, as they say, supposedly, are cracking down on that. So watch out. Probably not the best idea to be doing that. Also, much like we were talking earlier about with in terms of dealing with traffic, just don't be a jerk. Let people actually make their own appointments. They need them. You don't need them. Enough.
I will say, though, to not have to deal with the hassle, if I needed to go in, I'd pay $25 for an appointment.
I think a lot of
Let
people
someone else do the hassle for me.
Yeah.
Hey, with that, we'll take a quick break here on the Megacast. As always, though, you can find the latest headlines by going to civiccentertv.com and click on coronavirus. And then at the top of the page, we do have direct links to various resources, including the CDC, the state of Michigan, Oakland County, and our local communities as well, just to try to make it a little bit easier for you to find some of this information for yourself. We'll take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, we'll be speaking with a professor from Oakland University. What is she doing to try to help our police officers when they encounter someone with autism? That's next here on the Megacast.
One of the things you can look for in your friends is a change in behavior. These can be big changes, they can be small changes in mood, physical appearance. They may be sleeping less or sleeping more, drinking more, or their eating patterns may be different. One big change that can be pretty obvious is change in motivation. Do they no longer want to play basketball? Do they no longer want to play video games? Now that we're spending more time online and in virtual settings, it's really important to pay attention to the language that your friend is using and the words they're using to communicate.
So when we text our friends, are they taking longer amounts of time to respond? Are they not responding at all? You don't have to be an expert to try to recognize these signs. The second that you feel it in your gut and that you're concerned, that's the second to have the conversation and open the door to what might be going on.
Whatever gets you talking.
Today, it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal, the Michigan Crisis and Access Line, for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you for taking time out of your Friday to be with us here on the Megacast. Even though it's only been a 4-day work week, it has been a long week.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it. That's for sure. We've had a long week over here.
Yeah, but we are lucky. You know, the power was out here at the station.
Yeah,
the generator wasn't working, so a little bit of a snafu. But we're still very, very lucky that we have electricity, because we do know some people that are still without power. And, you know, several hours is hard, but several days.
Exactly.
So be grateful for the little things.
We are. We very much are. We're grateful.
Hey, with that, I'm excited to talk to our next professor. There's been a lot of talk lately about our law enforcement officers when they encounter certain people, especially at some of the traffic stops. How do you encounter and read some signals from people that are, have autism? Or, just even maybe other people like veterans who suffer from PTSD. And so they want to try to get the officers more training. And we have a local professor who was granted an award to be able to focus on this and help teach some of our law enforcement officers on what they should do to try to help ease that relationship when they encounter someone on the spectrum. So let's go ahead and bring in Professor Chaturi Edrisinha. She's with the School of Education and Human Services at Oakland University. So great to have you with us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, Ronnie. Hi, Tyler.
We were laughing before because it looks like we all coordinated our outfits today.
I'd say we did.
Yes, we look like twinsies today.
And I will say, when you work in news and you anchor, they do that. Coordinate some of their clothes and stuff. What color are you wearing today? Especially when you have women, so you don't clash up there. Sure. But we did not do that. But I will say, you seem like you're the happiest person.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So how have you been doing through the pandemic?
Well, I was very fortunate because I have always been teaching online courses. So it wasn't a huge transition for me, but it was a huge transition for my students because they're generally teachers who are teaching across the state of Michigan. And they had to very, very quickly switch from a face-to-face class to an online classroom. And that was quite a change.
So you were ahead of the curve before everyone else. See, look at that. Already a trailblazer before you even knew.
Well, that's Oakland.
So
most of our program is online. So that really helps because we have students from Kalamazoo to Grand Valley to Oakland County. So they're all over the state of Michigan, and they're in special education classrooms. And they come to Oakland to get an advanced degree on autism.
And how did you get into studying autism?
Well, I was an undergraduate student many years ago in a psychology program. And I was fortunate to have a professor who knew I was really struggling for cash and asked me if I wanted to have a little job on the side. And I said, oh, of course I do. And so he introduced me to a family without really telling me what it was about. And I had no idea. I didn't know what autism was. I hadn't even heard the word before. I didn't even know how to kind of correctly pronounce the word.
Wow.
And I was all but 18 years of age. So he introduced me to this young man who at that time was 17, going on 18. So we were about the same age. And he was nonverbal. And I was like, okay, what can I do with this young man? And so I decided, well, sure, I'll work with him. And the money was very good and I needed it. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll try to teach him how to play basketball. And it's a great game because I'm fairly petite and fairly short. And he was tall, so I thought, well, he'll get a little bit of advantage, which is good. So, maybe it will give him some confidence to, be able to play basketball against me. And so we started playing basketball. And this really changed this young man's life. And it was just amazing for the family. The family had never, ever, had that kind of social interaction. This is 20 years ago, so there was very little kind of recreational skills. And most of the, folks on the spectrum were just working in like workshops. So they weren't really thinking of things like leisure or just quality of life. So it changed their lives. And I remember asking the dad if he wanted to join this young man and play basketball. And the entire time, the dad was just crying, this grown man who was like 6'2", just having tears pouring down his face. And that just changed my life, and it changed the kind of direction I was going. So I was going into clinical psychology, and I decided, well, no, I want to study autism. And so that was one of the best decisions I have made in my life.
Oh, and I'm sure the family is still grateful to have you as well. Isn't it amazing how these one encounters can really put us on a different path in the world, and how many lives you've touched just by changing your focus to autism?
Absolutely. I mean, that was 20 years ago. I've gone through, I probably have worked with maybe direct contact, probably about, 1,000 families, but then indirectly, I've trained so many students who have gone on to train people. So that impact factor is absolutely amazing. And it just was because of this one young man and one professor that changed my life. So I'm so very, very grateful to be faculty and to be part of that process of paying that forward and then training the next generation of faculty.
Professor, I know we want to talk about your latest research with the police departments, but before we get there, if I can ask you, because we have had a few parents on over the past year with autistic kids, and it's been hard for them through the pandemic, and some of the kids have suffered setbacks because of the change in the routine and not having that one-on-one interaction. What has been your take on how the pandemic has impacted some of the families and the kids with autism?
Well, I think the pandemic has affected all of us in ways that I think we're just beginning to understand, right? So in a couple of years, we can look back and say, this is, I think, due to the pandemic. But particularly for kids with autism, it's been very, very difficult because you're looking at kids who are in a spectrum. So you have kids that need very little supports because they are pretty much functioning like their neurotypical peers cognitively. So they're getting A's and doing really well, but they need a lot of social skill supports. And so they're not doing well socially. So their IEPs, or their individualized education plans, or their goals are very different to kids on the other end of the spectrum that need those high supports, where their goals are maybe trying to, integrate cognitive skills in the classroom as well as social skills. So you have this wide spectrum of kids that need different types of supports. So already it's an issue where it's not a one size fits all kind of solution. So it's an individualized approach. But across that spectrum, almost all of those kids do best with structure and routine and familiarity. So that switch was incredibly tough, not just for the kids, but also for the families who had to then kind of work with these kids who were at home, and they were trying to struggle on how to become a teacher at home. I mean, we all did, but it was particularly hard. And I kind of worry now about them going back to face. I think that's going to be another transition. That's going to be tough, because I think all of our teachers have worked so hard and so well to kind of get that routine into place, to get that structure into place online for the last year, and they've done really well. So now we have to kind of switch back to a classroom, and that's going to be tough too. So it's going to be a lot of changes.
You know, that's such a good point, Professor, because we've all been so concerned about the kids at home, but really a lot of talk and thought has not gone into them going back into the classroom and that transition back into that routine. So, and then you think about some of these schools where 1 week they're remote, the next week they're in person, they're hybrid. It can be so confusing for so many people. And with that, though, too, can we go ahead and jump into some of your latest research? I know that you're working with some police departments on training about what they should do if they interact and they come encounter with an autistic person. How did this research come about?
Well, I think for me, it was something that was almost cathartic. I remember when I was I first moved to the state of Michigan, and I was pulled over. And this was quite a traumatic experience for me, like just hearing the sirens. I was already nervous. And so when the police officer, asked me to put my window down and started asking questions, I was exceedingly nervous, and I was just, blurting out rubbish. And I realized immediately, the moment I was saying these things, that, I shouldn't have said that. And luckily, because I was a neurotypical, I was able to repair that communication. And for me, fortunately, the officer also was very patient and had that good sense to, let me talk it out so I could get to whatever question he was asking me. And so, it turned out to be a good outcome. But that kind of got me thinking, because I was working in starting a program at Oakland where we pair neurotypicals with students, university students with autism. And part of what we were doing was teaching them how to drive and giving them support driving. And then that just got me thinking, well, what if these students, these, college kids, so you're looking at cognitively high functioning young men and women who have a driver's license, and so they can drive, they're independent, but what if they get pulled over? How would that encounter look like? Because a lot of the behaviors they will exhibit, like not having eye contact, evasive questions, taking things literally, a lot of the kind of the stereotypical behavior that they exhibit are really markers for law enforcement, and they convey risk, right? So the police officer is kind of trained to pick up on those things. So that really got me thinking about, well, what is it that I can do to address that? If I, as a neurotypical, had so much difficulty navigating this very, very stressful situation, then how would that impact someone with autism who doesn't have the kind of communication skills or the social skills to navigate out of that? So that's kind of where it started.
We're talking with Professor Edrisinha over at the School of Education and Human Services at Oakland University. She is working on a research project with law enforcement officers and when they encounter people with autism. And can I ask, how does the program look? Is it virtual or in person?
Yes. So what I did was to design these kind of vignettes. And right now, they are two-dimensional, so they would watch the vignette, and then there's a training that goes along with that. We're hoping to kind of make it into a 360 ocular system where it's completely virtual reality. Right now, they're just virtual. And that way, we don't really have to put the person at risk, and the police officer has a number of chances or multiple tries to de-escalate the situation without getting to that aversive or negative outcome. So there's a kind of like a training that they'll go through. We'll do a pre-test and post-test and evaluate the efficacy of the training. So that's kind of how it's set up. Right now, we're so fortunate to partner with Oakland University, the police department, and then we're hoping to expand that to Rochester and the other police departments. So yeah, I would be so happy if we can scale that up in the state.
So what has been the reaction from the officers that have taken part in this so far?
Well, thank you so much, Ronnie, for asking that question, because I think it's very, very important. The officers have been so just blown away, honestly. We just finished a series of questions, like debriefing questions that we did I did with a former graduate of mine who's now at Marshall University, we kind of talked to the officers to see what their reaction was. And they were just so grateful, I must say, for the training, because a lot of it is because they didn't know what to do, right? So it's not like, you have a trained officer going in there and they're making decisions that are uninformed. You have a situation where you have an officer going in there with really no training. So they're going in blind. And all the training that they have is that risk analysis from looking at a situation where there's someone who is who's a risk, So they've got all of their, skills are there, but all of their senses are heightened. And that's not a good combination if you want to de-escalate a situation. So I think what the training does is it provides another level of tools and another level so that of training to their current MOCAS training in the state of Michigan. So it's really, I think, something that they were really truly grateful for.
So with that, Professor, just another minute or two with you here on the show. How long is the training? Is this something that, since it is virtual, that would be easy for other departments to reach out to you if they want to take part in it?
Absolutely. They can contact me at ouca@oakland.edu. And most of the trainings will try to kind of individualize it to the police department, depending on how many officers they have and how much time they have, so they can kind of fit that into their training modules. So most of the police departments, they have some modules in the winter as well as in the spring. And so we try to kind of fit into their ongoing training. So it's not something that they have to remove, where they have to remove some module to plug this in. So they can kind of accommodate that with their current training.
Well, we so appreciate your time. We'd love to have you back on, maybe with some of the officers that have gone through the training. I think it'd be great to have their perspective as well. When did you start the research?
Well, we started it prior to the pandemic, and then we shot one of the scenes, and then right after that, we were shut down for a year. So we're just beginning to restart. So it's just, we're just restarting and trying to catch up after the pandemic.
Well, we do want to say congratulations, because we know you won the award to be able to help get this program going. But you do so much work with so many families with kids that are on the spectrum. And we want to say thank you for all of your work and for the families and for our community as well. And so we look forward to having you on again, and good luck on the research and on the project.
Thanks, Ronnie. Thanks, Tyler.
Again, Professor Edrisinha over at the School of Education and Human Services over at Oakland University. She's a board-certified behavior analyst and a doctorate in autism and developmental disabilities. What a resume. But I love the story about how that one encounter with someone who had autism put her on this path, this new journey in her life, and how it's helping so many people. So we wish her the best of luck in her research. We'll take a quick break here on the Megacast, and when we come back, we will continue kind of the discussion around law enforcement. Our good friends over at the West Bloomfield Police Department will be with us next here on the Megacast.
Motorcyclists are hard to see. To keep everyone safer, it's important to always look for them and know where most crashes occur. 84% of motorcycle and vehicle crashes happen on streets, not highways. And most crashes with motorcyclists occur when vehicle drivers are turning left. So before turning, especially to the left, make sure you look for motorcyclists. Then look again. It could save a life.
You see certain things get reincarnated in your children. My daughter is very much inspired by my wife's artistic pursuits. So my daughter started making necklaces. She makes what we call affirmation fashion. I tell her every day that your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. Your black is beautiful. And if there's anything better than being beautiful, it's being smart. And if there's anything better than being smart, it's being kind. And reaffirming that every day is our method of making sure her chin never drops. My dad wasn't around, and I remember riding a bike and falling off and cutting myself, and me never just wanted to get back on it. People ask, how your children learn how to ride a bike, and you did. I didn't teach them. I just created an environment where they taught themselves, and all I had to do was be there.
Great to have you with us here on the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here in the studios alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. You know, just a few glitches, still recovering from the power outage, but you know, we'll get through it, and it's Friday.
And you know what? We're innovating over here all day long, keeping things on the air. We innovated to keep on the air overnight, of course. We're innovating to have a seamless transition today, and who's noticed? Can you tell me what we've done differently? No, you can't. Exactly. We're doing fine, Ronnie.
We don't let problems stop us.
No, never.
And you know what? Who has that motto as well? The West Bloomfield Police Department. They are on the job 24/7. With us now, Administrative Sergeant Dale Young with us on the Megacast. Great to have you with us. How are you, Sergeant?
I'm doing well. How's everybody else?
We're recovering from the 4th of July holiday.
Yes. It's funny you guys should mention the storm, because I feel like we're still kind of shaking off the effects of that as well. So I certainly understand where you guys are coming from.
Right. It's been, and we forget about that. Police officers have to still be out patrolling. I don't know how many officers I've seen out directing traffic because of the lights being out. Can you tell us, Sergeant, too, when a traffic light is out, are you supposed to treat it as a four-way stop?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Right? So why can't people get that? If I remember correctly, it is a question on the test.
It is.
Yes. Yeah, I think that sometimes when things like that happen and it's unexpected, that sometimes I think people are just anxious to get home and sometimes forget.
So with that, Sergeant, if we can ask you, what exactly is the administrative sergeant?
So the administrative sergeant, my role that I'm currently in right now, I oversee our police service aides, our records clerks, maintenance, our custodial staff, and our mechanics. Essentially, I'm in charge of the overall building health, special projects, and generally lending support to the various bureaus within the department.
How long have you been with the department?
Well, I actually started as a police cadet in 2004, then moved to police officer in 2006. So I'm really kind of closing on my 15th year as a police officer.
Wow. Starting out as a cadet, those programs are really so important. Has it been everything that you thought it would be?
Yes, actually, I would say that and more, because it's really hard to define exactly what a police officer does, but I could definitely tell you I've had a great career, and it's certainly something that I would recommend to anyone that is interested in doing this line of work.
I will say you guys have a really cool video up on your Facebook page to try to recruit new people to the department. I love the slow motion action of the officers getting out the squad car. It looks pretty cool.
Well, thank you very much, and I want to give a little shout out to Officer James Pettinato, who is our community police officer who helped produce that video.
So with that as well, can I ask you, Sergeant, I see here that you're also the lead instructor for self-defense and some of the other safety training for the police department. What when you're in that role, and in today's day and age, because law enforcement's changed even since you've been on the job, I would think.
Yes, very much so.
So when we're talking about use of force and self-defense, do you approach it differently today?
So I will tell you this. I think that, I guess nowadays especially, we're making an extra emphasis on the de-escalation portion of use of force. And so essentially what we're trying to do as a department is that we want to hopefully handle situations before we actually have to use physical force. However, not every situation can be handled and taken care of that way, so we do have to train on other ways that we can take a situation that might be a high-risk situation and bring it under control. And so that's one of the duties that I have, is to instruct our police officers with some techniques on how to do that.
So with that, it's always different though when you're actually in the moment. How do you train for that?
So some of the ways that we do that is through scenario-based training. Sometimes it's through the various discussions that are had after different incidents take place. We learn from each other. We learn from other classes and courses that we go to, and then we try to take those lessons learned and apply it in the moment. So we try to think through these things, hopefully, before it's even something that we encounter.
And, if I can ask you, we just had the professor on from Oakland University, and she is doing a new research project helping to train law enforcement officers when they come in contact and interact at traffic stops with people with autism. When you're an officer and you're pulling people over, try to give us the steps. How hard is it to pull a car over and not know anything about the individual sitting behind the wheel?
That's a great question. And I would tell you that I'll go all the way back to being a brand new police officer, where you're really relying on that academy training. But generally speaking, and again, when I say general, I mean truly general. Normally what happens is that an officer observes a motor vehicle violation of some sort. The officer then turns on their lights and sirens, and they try to time that so that the motorist would be able to pull over in a safe location.
Yep.
Then from there,
I will say, every time those red lights come on, your heart starts to beat a little faster.
Absolutely. But then after that, then when they pull into wherever that safe place is, that they would try to get out of the car and basically introduce themselves to the motorist and explain why they were stopped that day. So how the officer handles that is through the repetition and through practice of going through those steps, those motions. And like you were probably guessing, not every situation is exactly the same, but generally speaking, I would say, the majority of traffic stops usually just end in something completely benign.
So the question is always asked, should you keep your registration in your glove box, or is it better for an officer from your safety standpoint? Is it better for people to put it maybe in their visor?
So I would tell you that it's really preference. However, if for some reason it's going to be in a location that is going to be difficult to get to, or if the motorist is nervous, sometimes it's better just to wait for the officer to approach their car and just let the officer know that, hey, my registration, my insurance is located in the visor. Can I get it? The officer will always, of course, say yes, or even in the glove box. Or if there's extenuating circumstances, the safest thing to do would be just to ask the officer if it's okay to go grab those materials.
See, I learn something new every day, and I've done, a few dozen ride-alongs with police officers in my time. With that, do you guys offer ride-alongs for the general public? Or I guess now it's just a little different with COVID still around.
So exactly. So with COVID, things are starting to open up slowly but surely. So right now, we're kind of in a holding pattern for that, but eventually, I would not be surprised if citizen ride-alongs was something that started to come back.
Again, we're talking with the Sergeant Dale Young over at the West Bloomfield Police Department. And Sergeant, I know that there's been a few other things going on there in the county. I saw on the Facebook page that a few days ago, the department had posted about a lot of larcenies out of cars. And it looks like just before, I don't even know if you know this, but just before we went on the show, it looks like you guys made an arrest. Do you know, can you talk about that at all, or?
So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to add any more information than what was already disseminated at this time, just because that case would be considered ongoing at the moment. But certainly, if anybody out there has seen anything or has more information to share with us, we always encourage everyone to give us a call on our non-emergency number, and that's that 248-975-9200.
You guys do a really good job with your Facebook page and trying to keep the community up to date and informed. Can you tell me more about the task force, though, Sonic? I haven't heard of this one before.
Certainly. So Sonic is a consortium, and so they're made up of police officers from the West Bloomfield Police Department, from the Novi Police Department, and from the Farmington Hills Police Department. And so Sonic is a special unit made up of those officers that they handle a wide variety of types of cases, and they really help to boost the capabilities for investigative purposes for the various detective bureaus, as well as sometimes they will do investigations related to narcotics. It just kind of depends on what the needs of the various departments are at that time. But it is it's a group of detectives that are very they're like the high-speed group.
That's a good analogy. How important is it for for departments to come together in collaboration and have some of these task force?
I personally, I think it's vital because crime has no boundaries, and so being able to pool the resources from your partners in the region and sometimes even out of state is invaluable, because you'd be surprised at how often something that's happening in West Bloomfield could be something that's happening in Novi and Farmington Hills, or even across the state. That's happened before as well. So I think that the more that we can work together, the better our capabilities are in law enforcement.
So with that, I understand there was an armed robbery recently at the JCC. Can you update us on that at all?
So just a general overview on that robbery is that it happened on July 4th, somewhere around noon. And in that particular situation, a resident was approached by a male suspect in the parking lot. So the ruse was to ask this individual for directions. And during that time, he pointed a handgun at the resident, and the resident handed over their belongings to him. The suspect then fled in an unknown direction by unknown means, and he's described as a black male in his 40s, 5'10", thin, muscular build. He's got a short black afro, acne scars on his face, and he was wearing dress clothes with fancy sunglasses at the time. So again, for everyone, if you have any additional information about that, please call us at 248-975-9200.
How unusual is it for us to have those types of crimes in this area? And we're talking in the middle of the day on a holiday.
Yes, thankfully low. And I think that, especially in this particular situation, I was very happy to see that, nobody was hurt.
Right, that's the most important thing. You can get, your wallet back and cancel your credit cards and do all of that, yes, but you can't get your life back. So, and so what advice do you give to people if they encounter a similar situation?
Well, similar situations like this, I think one of the most important thing is to remember that, unfortunately, they have to make some pretty difficult choices. But generally speaking, I think that complying with the individual and handing over your belongings, just as you stated earlier, it's much better to cancel credit cards, make insurance claims, whatever it is you need to do, and still be safe.
So, Sergeant, if I can ask you, about 15 years on the force, what's the coolest job you've ever held? Because there are so many different facets to police work.
So for me personally, it was the Detective Bureau and being a detective. I definitely enjoyed watching a case go from the initial police report and being responsible to get whatever other information that I needed to make sure that that case was presented properly in front of our prosecutors, and then ultimately seeing it through the court process. A lot of great memories there, and it's very rewarding.
So anyone out there thinking about going into law enforcement, what would you tell them?
I would tell them to, even if it's just a small inkling, give it a shot. There's many different departments, just like mine. Of course, I'm biased towards West Bloomfield. I love it. If you want to dip your toe in the water, you could be a police service aide potentially. You could be a dispatcher. If you want to be a police officer, by all means, come out, take a look at our department. In fact, believe it or not, we're hiring. So that is definitely something that I think people should be aware of, and certainly get more information from our social media, but also at our human resources page.
And we should say, too, it's not always a quick process or an easy process when you're getting hired by a law enforcement agency. However, it really is a service to the community. And so we want to say thank you to you and your entire team for always being on the job 24/7. You guys didn't get a break because of the 4th of July or take time off because of COVID. No remote work for you.
That's true. Very true. Thank you so much.
Well, we appreciate it. Again, Sergeant Dale Young with the West Bloomfield Police Department. Anything maybe I didn't ask that you want to add before we say goodbye?
One thing I'd like to point out to everyone is we recently took advantage of something called the Transparency Portal. And it's a very long address here, but if people were interested to take a look at some crime stats, see them visually represented with in a graph representation, I could certainly provide that. I could even put it into the chat if that would be easier. But I would encourage people that are curious to go there and just keep abreast of what their police department's doing.
You know, I love that you guys are doing that because it does help answer so many questions for people. If we can, we'll probably just go ahead and get that from you, and then when we post it to social media or to our website later, we can add that.
Yeah, just if you just send that link to Larry and to Ryan, who sent you the Zoom link for this morning's edition of the Megacast, we can get that into our description when we post later on today.
All right, sounds great.
Well, we so appreciate your time. Thank you, and happy weekend to you.
Thanks, you too.
Again, Sergeant Dale Young with the West Bloomfield Police Department. We are very lucky to have the caliber of police department that we have right here in our backyard. And when he said West Bloomfield is hiring, it is a highly sought after department for people to try to get on with. So anyone out there that's thinking about going into law enforcement, stop an officer and ask them. You know, I think it's great to be able to talk to people, and I know so many law enforcement officers, they welcome having the conversation with people about the job.
Yeah, and even if you're not necessarily interested in going into law enforcement as a job, and you're just a resident, or you're just curious as a resident or someone that works in the community or visits in the community about their life as a police officer, what they do in the community, they're always willing to answer those questions.
So, man, I have a frog in my throat today. You're listening to 89.3 WBLD Orchard Lake, 88.1 WBFH Bloomfield Hills. We'll take a break here and then after the break, we'll be joined by the founder and president of the Developing Kids. What is the program and why it's so important right now?
Can I ask you a question? Why did you get your kids vaccinated?
It was hard for them to social distance, to be isolated from their friends.
I want them to get back to school and sports games. So as a pediatrician, I recommend the vaccine to everyone I know.
The boys lost a former teammate and classmate who was only 20 years old. It's been a devastating year.
We want to get back to normalcy. Our daughter is really looking forward to being with her friends, being a kid.
How does marijuana affect the teen brain?
Our brains are still developing into our 20s.
With regular use, marijuana can affect teen brain development.
It can affect our brain's circuitry and blood flow and impair thinking, learning, and memory function,
which could hold us back from reaching our potential.
Don't let marijuana mess with your brain.
Get the facts at michigan.gov/drug-free.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Welcome back to the Megacast. I'm Ronnie Dahl here alongside Mr. Tyler Keefe. You can catch us Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon. Civic Center TV, Birmingham Area Municipal Access. You'll catch us Channel 15 on Comcast, 99 on AT&T, or you can listen to us on the radio, 89.3 Lakes FM, 88.1 FM The Biff. And if that's not enough for you, well, we still make it easy. You can catch us on Facebook where we live stream the edition of the Megacast. So my notes are a little wet.
Yeah, just a little bit. You know, I don't know if anyone saw over the break. Ronnie was opening a beverage over here, and the beverage was very excited to be joining us today on the Megacast and decided to, take over the script.
This isn't a new water. Starbucks was closed. I had to get my water, blah, blah, blah. So I like the bottle, and it's refillable. But it's sparkling water, so when I opened it...
Oh, it sparkled. Yeah, it definitely sparkled.
Kind of like our own little fireworks here in the studio.
Yeah.
Hey, it is summertime, and I know it has been such a tough time for kids over the past year, and you really worry about them and what they're calling a learning loss. And we know that typically over summertime, kids experience a learning loss. But what's it been like? You know, you have remote and then, you know, hybrid, back and forth. It's been such a confusing year. And with that, we want to talk a little bit more. Let's bring in Kimberly Johnson. She's the founder and president and CEO for Developing K.I.D.S. Great to have you with us, Kimberly. How are you? Happy Friday.
Thank you. Happy Friday to you. Good morning.
So tell us more about Developing K.I.D.S.
Well, Developing K.I.D.S. this year, this past June, we celebrated 15 years of operation in the city of Detroit.
Wow, so 15 years.
15 years. And it started as, I had no intentions of starting a nonprofit organization. Somebody just like, why? And I tell you that it has been quite a journey, one that I have tried to walk away from a couple different times. I had a great career I was working in, but literally I moved back to Detroit from college. I grew up in Detroit, family is all in Detroit, and moved back to the city. In the neighborhood I moved in, kids just kept walking back and forth to the liquor store. And that's all they were doing, riding their bike back and forth to the liquor store. And I said, there has to be something. So when they knocked on my door to play with my children, I said, well, you have to play where I can see you. Then I ended up with a yard full of kids. I was a previous teacher, and I absolutely love teaching. And a lot of people will say, the kids ran you out. I said, no, it wasn't the kids. It was the politics that ran me out of education.
Yeah.
And so I just started trying to develop some type of resolution of, there were 2-parent households and working families, and a lot of families felt like you had to leave the city to get quality.
Yep.
And I said, it shouldn't be that way. And unfortunately, I started the organization, and 6 months later, had a family tragedy, lost my husband, and that was with suicide, mental health.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Was repeatedly told nothing was wrong with him. And it ended in suicide, but also what could have been a homicide for my own self. So with 3 young children who were 10, 8, and 2, I had to hold on to my own life, so trying to stay alive. And then my family was caring for my children. And 7 months later, I started the first program on Developing K.I.D.S.
Well, that was quite the year.
Oh, yeah. Yes. So we started with 27 kids. Today, prior to the pandemic, we were serving over 600 kids a year. Wow. We are well on our way to 500, even this year in 2021.
Wow, that is amazing. But see how, like, life puts us on a path. And this is your journey. And if I can ask you too, Kimberly, how's it changed over the past year, though?
Oh, goodness. In 2020, we pivoted so I remarried a couple of years ago, and March 15th, you know, there was all this chatter about COVID, and, you know, I was hearing about it, and I remember we had programming that afternoon, after school activities, and my staff member said, Kim, something's really happening. They're talking about some virus. And I said, I don't know. And after that day ended, and I said, you know what? Okay. Everyone come in tomorrow, which is Friday. We don't have after school activities on Fridays. I said, we're going to really clean everything. And we're going to make a pivot to virtual programming on that next Wednesday, March 17th. What I didn't know is March 15th, also, my husband started to get sick. I had no idea he had COVID.
Oh.
And was told multiple times, even when the EMS came to the house, that he didn't have COVID, but he was really sick and they wouldn't take him.
I remember those beginning days, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was spiraling, and he was literally at home for a week. Thank God that he made it through, but during that entire time, I can't even tell you what. I was trying to keep the organization going. We quickly pivoted to virtual programming, did a lot of activities online. We had over 40,000 people coming to our sites during the pandemic, during those first 6 months of the pandemic, to get educational activities for their children. It was amazing.
Wow.
Yes.
So there's a little bit of a silver lining for your organization in the middle of this crisis.
Yes, we have, it's just growing. I will also tell you that the first, you know, I shared in the beginning that I had a great career, things were working well, family tragedy hit, and was trying to find out how to regroup. But when you start a small nonprofit, a lot of people don't want to invest. They're unsure. No one's heard of you. I don't know if I can trust them to give them any funding. So I never took a salary for the first 9 years of the organization. And then even the following 4 years, it was like the most I think was about $8,000, and I ended up giving it back to the organization. Now, as a single mother, I really couldn't afford to do that. But I knew that the organization, in order for it to build and grow, that I had to pay other people to help us to be able to develop and grow the organization. So I would hire people. They may have started at 10 hours a week. They inched up to 20, then 25, and now 40 to date. So January 1st, 2020, I finally became a full-time paid executive director. I left my career to completely do this work. You heard me say we started with a couple hours here and there for folks. We have 9 staff members, 8 full-time and 1 part-time, and that all happened within the last 3 years.
Wow. And can you talk about the programming? What is it about your programming that attracts the parents and the kids?
One, it has an educational focus. So, after my tragedy happened, I just kept going through a lot of different struggles, and then I moved to Southfield. And one thing I knew is that I wanted children to love to learn. So with Developing K.I.D.S, education is embedded all throughout the activities where the kids don't even realize that they're learning because they're having so much fun. And so we do a lot of that work throughout, just specifically, even in the city of Detroit, less than 15%, and this is parts of the pandemic, less than 15% of third graders could read proficiently. So we've always done a lot of work around literacy and preparing children to go into kindergarten. We are one of the very few organizations, I want to say one of maybe 2 or 3 across the city of Detroit that actually works with kindergarten through third graders after school and in the summer. A lot of folks I don't want them to they're 8 or 9 years old. They start 8 and they go up. Developing K.I.D.S works with children from ages 5 to 24. And we are actually going to expand to go down to serve 3 and 4-year-olds as well in the coming future. But we support these children all the way through their school years. We have had a 100% high school graduation rate since 2012, our first group of high school seniors. And then when they enter college, we're providing them with mentoring, monthly coaching sessions, mental health wellness sessions, care packages twice a month, and then we do college visits to see those young people while they're in college as well, so that they don't just get to college, but we're trying to help them to graduate from college. So I tell you, after school, so a typical child would come to us where they come 2 days a week. That's a typical, so when I say 600 children, those children are coming to us minimally 2 days a week for after school activities. We provide meals for every activity that we have, because we know that a lot of the youth that we serve are facing economic challenges in their family. In addition to that, we have and that is for kindergarten through 12th grade. When we have our summer camp, it is for kindergarten through 8th graders, and they come to us Monday through Thursday from 9 to 5, and it doesn't cost a dime.
Wow.
Educational activities. Yesterday we were at Greenfield Village. They take multiple field trips throughout the summer. There's dance and there's recreation and there's all different types of sports, activities all throughout the day. STEAM, we have GM coming the last week of July to do STEAM activities. And then all of these activities are at no cost to our families we are serving. There is no criteria to get into the households, to get into our program activities. It's just come as you are, and we meet you where you are. 88% are from local area of Detroit. Another 12% are from suburbs of Northfield, Novi, Farmington Hills, Southfield, Warren, Michigan. And just like today, right now we have a youth summit happening outdoors with about 75 14 to 24-year-olds talking about entrepreneurship. We have hired 180 youth to work this summer that are earning anywhere from $1,000 to $4,500. So we do a lot.
I'm like just trying to juggle all of that. Again, Kimberly Johnson with us here on the Megacast. She's the founder and president and the CEO for the program Developing Kids. It's a nonprofit organization. Where do you get your funding from now, Kimberly?
We are so thankful to have funding sources. The Skillman Foundation has been a supporter of our organization for many years in Detroit. Also, the McGregor Fund, they help to fund many of our general operations. We also have had funding from the Fisher Foundation. We have local groups such as the local union, Local 58 Union, who've been regular supporters over the years. We recently won a national grant from the New York Life Foundation. And this year, just a few weeks ago, we were so excited because the ladies of Impact 100 Metro Detroit awarded us their big give, and we won a $100,000 grant.
Woo!
So, yes, I would tell you the majority comes from grant writing. I hate grant writing, but the majority of it comes from grant writing. But we are also building our individual donation base too, donor base, and that's something that I'm really working to do. We just completed a text to give campaign, but it's not too late. People can go to our website and you just text to that number, phone number, and you will be able to donate directly to the organization, a one-time or a monthly giving opportunity. And then we have a couple different fundraisers that we do.
I know for so many nonprofits, they've struggled over the pandemic because they couldn't do their normal fundraising efforts. Was that the case with your organization as well?
So I tell you, I was very worried. In April of 2020, every last funder that I had a grant application into sent me an email that said, we may not be able to fund you, or it will be significantly low.
Oh.
We received every last one of those grants at the full amount.
Oh.
In addition to that, we have our budget. Again, I committed to do nothing but the work of developing kids, walking away from previous career that I had to just do nothing but developing kids at the start of 2020. And we have doubled our revenue since that time. And it has just been just committing to say, you know, it's time. This is a vision that was given to me to do this work. And despite, you know, everything that I went through, it was clear to me that this is the work that I'm supposed to do. And so I honestly, I love it. I love to do this every day.
So how many kids have gone through the program since 2007?
I would tell you, we're probably, I think it's around 4,000 to 5,000 kids. And I say that of kids, not just of, that doesn't count children where we may have gone to a school and did a couple presentations. I'm talking about children who have come, you know, all through a year. And they may not have come the next year, but a lot of them do. But that's where I get that number from, about 4,500 children. One of the exciting things is every June we have a education celebration, and we honor those 8th grade promotees, high school graduates, and college graduates. And I was able to sit with 2 Michigan State University graduates for the ceremony this summer. One, he started his own investment firm. The other works for Ford Motor Company. And they were some of the very first kids in Developing Kids 15 years ago. And they had me in tears because they said, I remember when there were just a few of us in one room, and now Developing Kids, you know, we are in 2 locations right now, but prior to the pandemic, we were in 7 different locations across the city.
Wow. Wow. See, think about all the lives that you've touched.
It's an honor. It truly is. We tell them once you come into the Developing Kids family, you're sucked in, you're in there. 3 of my staff members, current staff members, were former participants.
Oh, wow. Kimberly Johnson with us again, founder, president, and CEO for Developing Kids. And Kimberly, before we say goodbye, how can people find out more information?
So our website is developingkids.org. We are also on Twitter at developing_kids. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Developing Kids. And we're very active on our social media. We also have a LinkedIn page. Our full name is Developing Kingdoms in Different Stages, but we are very well known by our shorter name of Developing Kids.
It's been such a pleasure having you on the show. We so appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure for me. I am so thankful for the invitation, and I love being here with you. Thank you so much.
No, and best of luck. See, it's a good thing you didn't quit, right?
Yes. Never quit.
There you go.
It's my joy.
Well, we wish you continued success as well, and congratulations on the big grant. It's very well deserved and earned as well. Again, Kimberly Johnson with us here on the Megacast, founder and president and CEO for Developing K.I.D.S. With that, we'll take a quick break here on the Megacast. When we come back, Eric Wallis, the president for Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital, will be with us next here on the show.
Trevor Project is sharing how you can support LGBTQ youth who may be at risk.
It's simple. Just show them that you care. C-A-R-E. Connect. If you noticed any warning signs of suicide from someone you know, reach out to them.
Ask directly, are you thinking about killing yourself? It might be challenging, but talking about suicide is proven to reduce risk.
Respond. If they open up to you about their suicidal ideation, honor that trust by responding with compassion and empathy.
Empower. Talking openly is a great first step, but now you can empower them with the information and the support they need to improve their situation.
Learn more about how you can show them you care and help prevent LGBTQ youth suicide. Visit trvr.org/care.
People are getting out to walk and bike in higher numbers. More vulnerable road users and higher speed traffic can be a dangerous combination. Crash severity has increased, so if you're driving, be sure to slow down and look for people. There's no need to speed. If you're biking, ride with traffic. If you're walking, avoid stepping into the road if possible. If you have to walk in the street, walk facing traffic. Learn more at walkbikedrivesafe.org.
Here's one more reason to get the COVID-19 vaccine. It's your shot to win. Anyone 18 years or older in Michigan vaccinated between December 1st, 2020 and July 30th, 2021 is now eligible to win millions in cash prizes, including $1 million jackpots and $50,000 daily prizes. And vaccinated students could win thousands in college scholarships. For eligibility details and to enter, go to mishottowin.com.
Thank you for hanging with us on this Friday. Is this like late morning, early afternoon?
Yeah, it kind of feels like late afternoon. I'm kind of out of it.
Early afternoon, late afternoon. Great to have you with us. Just about 40 minutes left here in the show, and it's been such a roller coaster ride for all of our heroes on the front lines, especially those in the hospital. And while here in the public, especially for so many of us that are vaccinated, we kind of feel like the pandemic is almost behind us, but it's still very much real, especially for those working in the hospitals. Let's bring in Eric Wallis. He's the president over at the Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. Great to have you back with us. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on this not rainy Friday, I think.
I know, but it was like, I walked outside this morning, I was like, whoa, is it September? What happened to our hot summer weather?
Hopefully it's a wonderful break that everybody gets to enjoy this weekend.
And speaking of getting a break, are you guys getting a break at the hospital right now? Are COVID cases down?
Yeah, it is really great that I think yesterday when I looked across the entire Henry Ford Health System, we only had 12 COVID patients. And so it has really been good that the incidence within our community has decreased significantly. It's certainly not that way across other areas of the country or even other areas of the state. But right now we seem to be making some headway.
And so with that too, when we see other parts of the country starting to see somewhat of a bit of a surge again, and it tends to be in those states with the lower vaccination rates, and we know the Delta variant is out there, does that concern you?
It's always a concern that the longer that we don't get to a place where we have high vaccination rates across the country and frankly even across the world, that there are going to be newer and newer variants that emerge. Just this week, a study came out of Israel, which is the highest vaccinated country in the world. The good news is that the Pfizer vaccine against the Delta variant still prevents about 63% of all cases. So, that's significantly lower than what we saw with the 95% protection against all cases. The good news is that the Pfizer vaccine still presents symptomatic cases about 93% of the time, even with the Delta variant. So, the good news is even right now with our current vaccines, if you do get ill, you may not even know that you're ill, or the symptoms are going to be exceptionally mild. The concern as we go forward is going to be that there's going to be another variant, and the next variant we may not have that level of protection against. And so, the vaccination rates that we see, we're very fortunate here in Oakland County to have one of the highest vaccination rates in the state. But we've got to get everybody else to come along with us too.
So with that, I know that Henry Ford Health Hospital System, they are going to start mandating all the employees get vaccinated. Where do things stand on that front?
Yeah, obviously, that announcement just came out about 10 days ago or so. And so we've really spent the last, 10 days very deeply involved in conversation with our team members. I would say we've got, keep in mind, we've got almost 70% of our folks who already are vaccinated. And so for many of those folks, I've had many people say, thank you. It's about time. Why did it take so long? This is what they wanted to see because they know that they're going to be better protected in their workplace. We know that really all through the spring and early part of the summer, we had a lot of our team members that just, were very open with us and said, when you mandate it, we'll get it. And so I think that was one of the things that kind of pushed us down this path to say, okay, well, then we know that we've got to do this. And frankly, one of the things I really, really want to stress is this is not new for healthcare. I'm a nurse by background, and I've told our team, since the minute I entered nursing school 20-something years ago, folks have been saying to me, you got to have your hepatitis B vaccinations, you got to have your MMR vaccination, you got to have your Tdap vaccination, you got to have your flu vaccination. This is just the next step. As our world continues to evolve and change and new threats come forward, we know that these vaccines are very safe. We've got 175 million people in this country that have had at least one dose of this vaccine. There's never been another drug in the history of our country that has had this much data prior to its full FDA approval. None. And so, when folks say, well, we don't know if it's safe. No, we absolutely know that this drug is safe, or these drugs are safe. And frankly, if folks who are concerned about the mRNA vaccines, we even have the Johnson & Johnson vaccine that is the older vaccine technology that's out there as well. So there's lots of great options. And what we've told our folks is at the end of the day, this is about one thing. It's about keeping our team members safe. And we know that this vaccine will do that. And so that's why we've gone down the path of making it a condition of employment going forward.
And so with that, are you concerned that there are going to be some employees that say, I'm not getting it and walk away?
Yeah, our goal is absolutely that we don't want a single person to walk away from us. We do have some history that even about 9 years ago when the system made the flu vaccine mandatory, that there were some folks who left the organization. It tends to be much smaller numbers than what people fear, which is a good thing, but we're not taking any of that for granted. Just this week, we had 4 different sessions, day shift, night shift, evening shift, with our team members to spend several hours answering their questions and trying to make sure they had the right information. We had some of our clinical experts available for them to talk to. So we're doing everything in our power to make sure that people have the right information and they can make a good choice. I would also add that what we've also told folks is we know there's people that may have a medical reason or a religious reason that they can't take a vaccine. And we've got an exception process for that. And I've said to folks, I encourage folks, if you have a legitimate reason for not being able to take this vaccine, apply for the exemption. And if it is real, if it makes sense, we want you to have it because we don't want to put anybody in harm's way.
Right. And if I can ask you, again, Eric Wallis with us here on the Megacast. He's the president for Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. I'm really somewhat surprised that the numbers are as high as they are of people working in the healthcare industry that have chosen not to get vaccinated, because I feel like your employees and the employees at the hospitals across the country, and we should say that you employ so many people that aren't just on the front lines in the care world. There are so many other positions within the hospital as well. But these employees have seen firsthand the devastation of COVID-19, that I'm surprised those numbers aren't higher for them to be vaccinated.
Yeah, and I think what you also have to look at too is, as you mentioned, we do have a lot of folks who don't work in direct caregivers. They're folks that aren't necessarily licensed caregivers. When you look at the number of vaccinations amongst our physicians, our bedside nurses, those numbers are actually quite good. Our physicians are over 93% vaccinated. And those folks who are in direct patient care are very highly vaccinated. I think like the rest of the public, where we've kind of struggled a little bit is in those roles that are a little farther away from the bedside, and to your point, don't really deal with direct patient care on a day-to-day basis. And so those are the roles that we are a little bit lower than where we'd like to be, and we're spending a lot of our time trying to help those folks understand the science and why it's important for them too.
So we know that while you were the first to announce it here within our area, now Trinity Health has announced that they're going to be mandating it for their employees. Do you think this is going to become the norm within healthcare settings going forward?
Yeah, I do. And I think for all the reasons that I mentioned, we know that the vaccines have great efficacy, and we know that they're safe. And I think we also know at this point, the only way we get out of this pandemic for the long haul is to get people vaccinated. It's as simple as going back to, we had a day and time in this country when everybody had to get the smallpox vaccine, when everybody had to get the polio vaccine. Well, we don't have to do that anymore, because those viruses have really been eliminated from the industrialized world. And we know that if we can get those high levels of vaccination, we'll get out of this. When we announced, I think the 28th of June, there were 12 healthcare systems in the entire country that had gone forward with a mandatory vaccination. As of Wednesday, now there's 24. And that doesn't even include Trinity, and their multiple, I think 117,000 team members. So it's every day that there are new folks coming forward and announcing that they're going to make this mandatory. So I do think that you're going to see, and I won't say that it's all going to be, this calendar year, but I think in a very short order, you're going to see almost all healthcare systems make this a mandatory part of employment.
But Eric, I think it's an important thing that you pointed out, that while there's so much talk around the COVID-19 vaccine, this is not, having mandates on certain vaccines is nothing new to the healthcare industry.
You're absolutely right. Like I said, I think, 9 years ago, we added flu to that list of work requirements. A few years before that, the measles, mumps, and rubella shot was added because there was an outbreak of measles in our country that was really threatening everyone. And so, these things are safe. We wouldn't have gone down this path if we didn't absolutely know that these vaccines were safe. Even our own healthcare system, we've given over 350,000 vaccinations to folks in Southeast Michigan, including our own team members. And we've looked at the complication rates for every single one of those folks. People who have an adverse reaction, which is something that actually they need to seek treatment, go to their doctor, go to their emergency room, is 0.09% of the folks that Henry Ford is vaccinated. They are exceptionally safe. And so that's why we feel comfortable going down this path.
And so with that, do you think you're having the argument too, though, because these vaccines have not had the final approval from the FDA? Would it be different if they were already in that stage?
Yeah, I think, this is the normal process. And again, what I would stress is there's never been a drug in the history of this country that's had more people receive the drug or been involved in the approval process, the trial process, prior to full FDA approval than these medications. And so, that in and of itself shows you there is sufficient data. We fully expect that they're going to get full approval really any day at this point. And I think what you're going to see is there are some health systems that are waiting till there is full FDA approval to go forward with their mandate. We expect that full approval is going to be achieved before our September 10th deadline. And so that's kind of why we felt comfortable with moving forward. The EEOC came out with a statement a few weeks back saying that employers are well within their rights to mandate these vaccines because they have been approved by the FDA for use. They just haven't gotten to that final step of full approval at this point.
So I know that when we've talked before, staffing has been an issue, not just at your hospital, but at businesses and companies, throughout the region. Do you think, is this going to maybe attract people to come work for your organization, or do you think it's going to make it harder for you to, recruit new talent?
We've seen some of both. We've seen people that have applied in that first 10 days because we did mandate the vaccine and they want to work in a place where they know they're going to be safe. And again, we've also had conversations with some of our team members that say, I'm not going to be staying. I don't know on the balance that it's going to make things dramatically different for us. The labor market at this moment is exceptionally challenging, and there's no doubt about that. And I think in spite of that, we felt convicted that this was the right thing to do to keep our folks safe and our community safe. And so that's why we moved forward.
So with that, again, Eric Wallis with us here on the Megacast, president for the Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. Anything else going on over there at the hospital you want to share with us? I feel like this entire time it's always been focused around COVID.
Yeah, well, no, and I appreciate that. I think one of the really cool things is we are actually next week going to be starting our growth phase. And so you'll see if you come to the campus starting next week that we're going to be doing a little construction. And we're actually going to be start the construction of a parking structure here on the campus. It's the first one in West Bloomfield Township. And it's going to be about 5 stories tall when it's all said and done, and about 600 new parking spaces here on the campus. And so we're really excited to be in that phase. It's great to know that so many people want to come here that we've been running out of parking. So we have to try to make that a little more convenient. And then the other thing that's going to enable is we're now in the planning phase for an expansion to the hospital itself. And we've started working with some architectural firms and designers. And really, if things go well, hopefully by the end of 2022, the beginning of 2023, we're going to break ground on a very large expansion of the West Bloomfield Hospital here so we can better serve the community.
Well, that is great to know, but I will say, don't take this personally, but I hope to never have to visit you.
Yep. I tell folks, one of the best parts of my job is I get a chance to get out and talk with our patients. And every single one of them that I talk to, the last thing I say is, it's been so great to meet you. I hope to never see you again. So, we're okay with, we're not the place that everybody always wants to come. But at the end of the day, we want to be here not just for the illness and treating illness in our community, but we want to be here to increase the wellness in our community too.
Absolutely. Well, again, Eric Wallis, president for the Henry Ford West Bloomfield Hospital. We always appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again, and happy weekend to you.
You too. Stay dry.
With that, we'll take a quick break here on the Megacast, and then we're going to round out the show with a very interesting guest who found a box in the basement of his uncle's home. What was in that box that is going to make it historic? That's next here on the Megacast.
Today it is easier than ever to join Michigan's Organ Donor Registry and help build a bridge of hope for organ, tissue, and eye donation. Just one person can potentially save or help improve the lives of up to 75 people. By joining, your legacy could be the gift of life. Sign up today at michigan.gov/SOS or at any of the more than 145 Secretary of State self-service stations located across Michigan. Be part of Michigan's Bridge of Hope by adding your name to the Organ Donor Registry.
Who is struggling right now?
I am.
My son is.
Many are struggling with anxiety, depression, and substance use. Before it becomes a crisis, reach out to MyCal. the Michigan Crisis and Access Line for free confidential support 24/7. Available in the Upper Peninsula and Oakland County. Just call or text 1-844-44-MyCal or chat online at michigan.gov/MyCal. A message from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services.
To Sophia and Gabriel, even though these old knees can't follow on your adventure to the forest today, these flowers represent my love. These stitches and threads join us together. And wherever you see a flower, a bird, a beautiful tree, know that my love is with you.
Make the forest part of your story at a park near you. Find one at discovertheforest.org.
Great to have you with us here on the Megacast. We understand if you can't hang out with us Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. until noon, 2 hours a day. That's why we make it easy for you. If you want to catch previous episodes of the show, just go to civiccentertv.com, click on Megacast, or the on-demand section if you just want to catch the individual interviews. My mom had recently passed away, Tyler, and we worked on her house, but we had been going through the house, and obviously there's so many boxes, and the old photographs that we found, and each one has a story. And, back in the day, too, when they had the Polaroids, your parents would write on the back of it, age 3 or whatever. And it really just takes you down memory lane. But for our next guest, he has a box of old photographs that really tells a story. Lance Rosso, he's a photographer, joins us now on the Megacast. Great to have you with us, Lance. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
So you are a photographer yourself, correct?
Yes, I have been a freelance photographer for over 20 years. I also work in the video industry. So right now I have a full-time job at Ford. I am a video producer there too. But the photography I've always done because I enjoy it. And that's just sort of my passion. I mean, I like video too, but photography is just something that's always clicked with me.
So if you've been doing it for 20 years, you remember the old school days, right? Putting the film in and then getting the negatives and going into a dark room.
Yes, it's interesting because when I started in photography, I, of course, had a film camera in high school back in the 80s. And, I liked it, but I was a little challenged because I have a condition called aphantasia, which means I can't picture things in my head. So a lot of photographers can kind of compose the shot in their head the way they want it, take the picture and sort of know what it's going to look like. I don't have the ability to do that. So I found it a little frustrating that I took the picture and I have to wait so long to see what I had and didn't have a correlation. So when digital came out, that's when I really began to take off because it allowed me to overcome that little condition that I had and see things immediately. So that's when I started really getting into photography.
Wow, just think of the technology and how much it's changed. But with that, the reason we have you on is because your uncle was a photographer, but you guys found a gem in some old boxes. Tell us more about that.
Well, so growing up, I had an uncle of mine, my dad's brother, who he was born here in Dearborn. He went to Fort St. He was born in 1921. In fact, he would have just had his 100th birthday not too long ago. He went to Fort St. and then after the war, World War II, he moved out to California. So he would come to town once every couple of years, or he would drive his VW bus or his Bug across country.
Oh my gosh!
He'd take photos, because he'd always be taking photos. He'd go back, he'd come back, the next time, and he'd bring the photos that he took the last time. So growing up, I had all these really wonderful photos of myself, that were taken by a professional photographer. So when I got into photography, this is the guy that kind of inspired me because I thought I wanted to be the person in my family that could take those kind of photographs. So I always strive to do that. But, and since he lived in California, I didn't really have a close relationship with him, growing up. And my mom didn't like him. She thought he was a little conceited. Those California guys, they're kind of stuck up.
Plus, you got to remember back in those days, a long distance call, it would cost you a pretty penny.
And he was a bachelor too. He remained a bachelor his whole life. So, that was also something back in the 40s and 50s that, people, why don't you get married? That wasn't him. He was a free spirit. So anyway, in the later years of his life, I did connect back with him. We talked a lot about photography. He was still into building computers. So he passed away in 2002. And when he passed away, I had asked my cousin who lived out there, who was my dad's sister, my Uncle Stan's sister's son, because I figured since he was as close as he had to a son, I figured he would probably get the house and go through things. And I said, if you ever run across any of his photos, could you please, send them to me? I'm a photographer. I'll scan them. I'll send them. I'll do whatever you want. Well, that was 2002, and so only this past February did I get a call from him saying that they found some boxes because they were moving, and there was so much stuff in his house at the end of his life that they kind of put things aside. I can understand it was a little overwhelming, and maybe they just kind of lost track of it. But when they found it, they immediately thought of me, and so they said, we're going to send you these. There are 2 boxes, actually, of photos. So they were, when I opened them up, there was probably, I would say, 30, 40, 50,000 negatives,
wow.
30,000 slides, several hundred printed photos, and not just of my family, but of people that a lot of other people might recognize as well.
So when you started looking at them, what did you discover?
Well, it's funny because when they first sent them to me, they said they were going to send me a couple boxes of photography magazines. So I was expecting more magazines than anything. And when I opened the box, there was like a magazine on top, and then the next photo was the first photo that I saw, and it's an interesting photo. You'll probably recognize the person in it.
Oh my gosh, how cool.
So, and he's in a Shelby GT350. So I work for Ford, and I saw this, and I'm like, wow, I love Gilligan's Island. And I saw this picture, and then after that, I just started going through and finding just picture after picture after picture of things. Now, I knew that he said that back in the 40s and 50s and 60s out in California, they were sort of the paparazzi before they existed. So they would go hang out at like parties or hotels to see if they could get pictures of stars. So a lot of the shots I have are just kind of random shots of people, but there are also some things that he was hired to do. So if you'd like, I could just maybe start showing you some of these pictures. I feel I'm talking a lot about them. You want to see this photo,
absolutely.
Right.
Share them with us. So, but I'm just thinking, what was that like for you when you were digging deeper into that box?
You know what? To start off with, let me get you a photo. This is the man himself. This is my Uncle Stan Russell. And
he's handsome.
And one of the things that I found and that I knew about him was that not only did he was a photographer, but he also enjoyed being a character in some of his own photo shoots. So you can see that this was something he did for Ford. So he was one of the models, and he would set up the shot. And these are just some prints that I found. And here's another one that I thought was kind of interesting. So maybe it was an ad for a fishing pole or somebody. So it looks like he's in a little ice fishing shack, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
The cool thing is, so I found this picture, but then he took this picture too, which is so even more fantastic because that shows how he set it up. All his lights and all his setup and all his crew.
Wow.
And he was such a great photographer. I said it'd be one thing if you found 50,000 negatives of someone who was kind of a poor photographer. That'd be, but this guy, he had an eye. And it's interesting because that's one thing that I think that I've always had even before. I always had an eye for photography, and some people have it, some people don't.
Yep.
It's just like my mom, she's an artist. All this stuff on the wall here, she painted all this stuff freehand in the basement here. And that's something I always admired of people who could actually draw and do that, since I didn't get that talent. But this is something that, photography I can appreciate, I can understand. So here's another one. This is Bing Crosby and Rosemary Clooney for an ad for Squirt.
Wow, how cool.
And the cool thing is, like, for this shoot, I have all these outtakes from it as well. So he took that shot, and then he had all these different outtakes. There was another photo he did, let's see, see, right here. I don't know if anyone might recognize this. Some of the older people in the audience might. There was a TV show on in the 50s called The Untouchables. Well, this was the photo that they used for their advertising. It was a colorized version of this photo. So when I saw this, I thought, wow, that's The Untouchables. So my uncle, he took that shot, but I'm wondering, why did he have the shot? And then I realized these are the outtakes. So these, maybe their eye just wasn't, something was a little bit off, because they didn't have Photoshop back then. So if you wanted to, do if something was wrong, you had to just take another photograph.
Yeah, and think about that too. When you talk about how talented he was, you didn't have the equipment that you had today. Like, you had to really know how to take a great picture.
Exactly. And when I look at some of the things, he did a picture of the Ford Rotunda at night that I have here. One of the pictures, I have so many pictures, or something like this, where he shot the Hollywood Bowl at night, and he did it so he got a silhouette. And the skill to do that, you know, is incredible. You have to know how much light there is and calculate. And as I said, I kind of take for granted a lot of the stuff that digital does for me that allows me to do my art. And he didn't have that. So I know that his skill level, even though mine's about here, his was like way up here.
So Lance, what are you going to do with this treasure trove of new photos that you have?
So from past experience, because I've had my photos online for many years, you know, I've done stock photography before too, and I've seen people take my photos and steal them and put them on other stock photography sites. And so with these, since I know that these are very special and there's so many of them, I wanted to, my dream was to partner with Getty Images. That was my end dream. So I started posting images on different sites, and on a Facebook vintage baseball group, a representative from a company called Diamond Images saw those, and he reached out to me. There were pictures of Sandy Koufax pitching in a game in 1961. And he took maybe 40 or 50 photos. And he was so impressed with the quality of that he contacted me and asked if I would like to be on Getty Images. So it worked a little bit differently than I thought, but it was, and to me because protecting my uncle's reputation and the work means everything to me. So, and I know that Getty's is a very reputable organization, and they don't fool around with people who steal their work.
So have you made it through all of the photographs and you know, the negatives?
No. So you know what? One of the things, I just want to go grab a negative here. It'll take me like 1 second.
That's okay.
I had everything here with me because I wanted to kind of give you an idea of sort of what I'm dealing with is the different sizes. So everyone's familiar with the 35 millimeter negative.
Right.
That's
actually in today's generation, they aren't. They don't even know what a rotary phone is. So
that's right.
And so these are 2x2 negatives. So these are getting a little bit better in quality, resolution, as you know, as we would call it, or megapixels. And then what you do is you go all the way up to a photograph that's this size. This is a 4x5 negative. Now, a 4x5 negative, they say, is the equivalent of like 400 megapixels of data. So when I scan these, a lot of times, you know, it takes a while because every picture I'm scanning them and then I'm removing all the dust and scratches as well. So when you say how long this is going to take, this is several years long project because I don't even know what's in you know, a lot of the negatives.
Oh wow.
The photos I know, and I think a lot of the big stars and things I've found. But you know, then again, who knows? Because I never know what's going to happen. And then, of course, there are lots of other pictures of my family, like my mom's, my mom and dad's wedding I've never seen before. Pictures of me I've never seen before. Pictures of my family. Pictures of Dearborn. I put a couple photos on my iPad because I thought it might be a little bit easier to show you that way. I can just kind of scroll through a bunch real quickly. But just to give you an idea, kind of the things that he shot. So this is just in Los Angeles. So he shot a lot in Los Angeles too. And then he went to like Las Vegas. I don't know how well you can see some of this because I think I don't know if it's washing out or not.
No, we can see, yeah.
Can you see it okay?
Yep, yeah.
Okay. So all these pictures, and then so there's like a model shot, more like a pinup, I would say that you know you might call it. This is the Rose Bowl in like 1970. This is a theater in East Dearborn that burned down, you know, or there was reconstructed years ago. This is a shot of my dad's cousin. I showed this picture to her daughter, or to his daughter, who'd never seen that picture of him before.
Wow.
I showed pictures of people, my dad's cousin's widow. My dad and his cousin were the best friends growing up. I showed him or her pictures of her husband that she'd never seen before when he was 18 years old. You know, the blessing that these came into my life is one thing, but I'd like to get them out to the people that they mean something to as well. And so any family members that I know, you know, have, you know, pictures of maybe other family members, I've reached out to contact them.
Right, because it's a snapshot in time and it's taking people down memory lane, and it's so great to come across this because in today's day and age we take everything, you know, digitally. How many people actually print a photograph any longer?
Yeah, and if you look online, there is a big resurgence in the auctions and things for old photographs, especially old sports photographs and sports memorabilia. That's always been something, but lately you've seen more pictures like this. Another picture that he took that he made a lot of copies of and prints of was President Kennedy. And he took several pictures at an event he was at. Now, this picture here has never been published as far as I know.
Wow.
So when this goes up on Getty Images, that will be the first time this image will be available to the public. And there's a lot of, prints of this as well. So again, I don't know as far as what I have, what I'm going to end up doing with all of it. But in the meantime, I want to protect it. I've taken every image that was a photograph and put it in a acid-free backing. And that was one thing too. My uncle did take really good care of his images. He was good at organizing. I think when they put them in the boxes, though, they got a little mixed up. That's probably one of the reasons. But I would say a third of them were labeled, which is pretty good. Like you said, people have all their photos on their phone. And you know what? One thing that I like to always remind people, because I'm a photographer, I have my pictures backed up. Here I have them backed up in drives in my safety deposit box. If you have all your pictures on your phone and that's the only place you have them and you don't have them backed up, please back up your phone, because if you lose that, you lose all those memories. And the tragedy that we've seen in these basements being flooded. I live in Dearborn. I live in West Dearborn. I know the history of this house. This house has never had a basement flood. I don't keep those kind of things down here. Anyway, I've got some record albums and things, but like the photographs and stuff, I keep on my upper level. But take care of those old photographs and try to save them for future generations. But also take care of your own photographs and back them up. Because I've seen people who lost their phone and they lost all their images, and that's just horrible.
Oh gosh, it is. But you have years of discovery yet to make. How exciting for you, and what a gift that this has come your way as well.
Yeah, I'm grateful to be able to share it too, because I said he was a great photographer, and I think I'm like him a little bit. I don't really put my work out there a lot. It's not like I'm always putting my work in people's faces. And he was humble too. About that. And so I'm just glad that, it might be 20 years late, but he's getting his recognition.
Hey, look at some of those photographs, like a JFK, just amazing. Incredible. Just amazing. Gosh, and the life he must have lived, the stories behind the photographs as well. That's what seems so fascinating to me. Again, we're talking with Lance Rosso. He's a photographer who was lucky enough to come across some old photographs of his uncles, who was a professional photographer out in California. Lance, we wish you the best, but we so appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much for having me on. I really enjoyed it.
Hey, so are you going to be posting some of these as you discover new things up on your photography page or something?
So normally what I do is, since so many of these things are centered to Dearborn or LA, I've been posting them on groups like Facebook groups for vintage photographs for LA or for Dearborn, or like vintage sports groups. But for right now, since I'm building my Getty library, I'm kind of focusing on that right now. And until I get it out there, I need to make sure that anything I put out falls under their guidelines too, because I can still, I still own the copyrights to all my images. But as far as what how I put them out there, I want to make sure that I'm doing that the right way as well.
Well, when you get to the end of it, we'd love to have you back on.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, and who knows what I'll find. And as I go along, I'm going to start putting together collections. And also my goal, too, is to put together a gallery show that I could have somewhere of his photographs.
That would be absolutely fabulous. And I think you need one here in Dearborn and one out in LA as well.
Good idea.
Just our 2 cents. Lance, again, we so appreciate your time, and happy weekend to you.
Great, thanks. Same to you.
What a gift.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
It's an amazing story, and it's seeing history, not just American history with the pictures of presidents and various celebrities and pop culture and whatnot, but also of Lance's family, certainly, and of our local area as well, with all those historical photos of Dearborn, and all throughout the country, also in a place like LA that's got such a long history as well.
His uncle was a handsome guy, and I also wonder the stories behind some of those pictures. Where was he to get that shot? Because I will say, someone who was a reporter and you got that shot, there was always a story behind how you were able to get it. So I'm sure his uncle led quite the life. So how cool, though. He's like, it could be years before I go through all.
Yeah, and being able to see that history firsthand and see all those different experiences firsthand, and kind of put yourself in the mindset of your uncle, having had had a similar career to what he's had, doing the same thing and being a photographer yourself, and kind of imagining being in that place with that technology and doing what his uncle did. I mean, it's just absolutely amazing.
The size of the cameras back then.
Yeah, I know. They're bigger than the studio here.
Well, it's great to have everyone with us. We thank you for taking time out of your week to be with us. We want to say thank you to Jake, Larry, and Ryan for all their help this week in getting the show on the air. Have a happy and safe weekend. I was going to say holiday weekend, but it's just a weekend.